On the grand avenues of the United States, the glittering shop windows still attempt to uphold an old promise. That hard work is the path to dignity. But beneath the reflection of these lights, something darker stirs. A new form of poverty that lives not on the margins but at the heart of the system. It is silent, disguised, and increasingly common. It is not found in makeshift shacks, but in homes with unpayable mortgages, in indebted families still struggling to keep up appearances. It is modern misery, clean, digital, and socially acceptable. America, which for decades sold the world an image of unlimited prosperity, is beginning to reveal invisible cracks. Economic reports remain optimistic, but the evidence of daily life paints a different picture. Supermarkets with reduced shelves, overcrowded hospitals, and families experiencing a silent collapse, emotional, financial, and spiritual. Abundance still exists, but it has been privatized. The country that produced the concept of the American dream now struggles between statistics and survival. Inequality has become part of the landscape, and the cost of stability is increasingly high. The system continues to function, but for whom? This documentary investigates what lies behind this illusion of prosperity. What is really happening at the economic heart of America? And to what extent can the empire of abundance sustain its own lie before the collapse becomes impossible to hide? If you want to understand what's behind this new face of American poverty and discover how it's changing the social and economic landscape of the United States, subscribe to the channel now and follow this investigation to the end. What will be revealed here goes far beyond statistics. It's the real geography of America's silent collapse. In America's urban landscapes, the collapse didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in silently, like an invisible infiltration that begins until the roof collapses. Cities that were once symbols of the American dream now resemble abandoned models of an old promise. Detroit, once the capital of industry and working-class pride, has become an open-air museum of social bankruptcy. Portland, once synonymous with alternative progress, struggles with inflation, unemployment, and despair disguised as normality. Cleveland, Chicago, Philadelphia all share the same symptom: slow emptying, businesses closing their doors, and the weary gaze of those trying to sustain a life that no longer fits within their own budget. Supermarket shelves remain full, but purchasing power evaporates with each new price increase. The minimum wage no longer buys the basics. Credit has become both a lifeline and a trap. Lines at food banks grow longer, while advertisements continue to promise abundance and opportunity. The contradiction is brutal. The country that feeds the world now struggles to feed its own workers. There are neighborhoods where poverty disguises itself as routine, where despair is contained by a practiced smile. Rent consumes half the salary, transportation takes the rest, and hope is paid in installments without interest until the next collapse. It's a system that doesn't kill all at once. It only slowly drains the vitality of millions, while official reports insist that everything is under control. The signs are everywhere, in parking lots overflowing with families living in vans, in shopping malls transformed into shelters, in schools that have started serving 3 meals a day. Because many students don't eat at home. Yet the headlines talk about recovery, as if collective despair were merely a statistical variable to be corrected in the next quarter. But what lies behind this apparent normality? Who really profits from a society that works harder and harder to have less and less? This answer, like almost all uncomfortable truths, lies in the invisible causes that those in power prefer not to discuss. Leave your opinion in the comments below. Behind the apparent calm, there is a machine disguised as normality. The invisible poverty was not born by chance, but from the architecture of a system that transformed consumption into dependence and debt into citizenship. Credit, once a symbol of upward mobility, has become a kind of toxic oxygen that keeps the country breathing but slowly poisons it. Every installment purchase, every digital signature, every new card sent by mail is not a benefit. It is a silent contract of modern servitude. Large corporations understood early on that profit lies not in selling products, but in selling permanence. Banks, platforms, and governments orbit the same core, that of economic submission. The indebted citizen is predictable, obedient, and useful. They don't protest, they don't question, they just pay. It's a model that disguises collapse with constant stimuli, illusory discounts, endless promotions, and slogans that replace freedom with available limit. The result is a society that consumes to exist and works to avoid disappearing. Marketing sells prosperity, while the financial system profits from scarcity. Collective debt has come to be treated as an indicator of growth, and the more people sink into interest and endless deadlines, the more the economy claims to be stable. It's a calculated paradox, a perfect theater in which the spectator pays for the ticket and also the scenery. At the heart of this mechanism is the culture of distraction. News of unemployment is drowned out by the new. Season of a TV series, gas price increases disappear under a viral meme, and the population's despair is converted into engagement on social media. The collapse has ceased to be political. It has become emotional. People no longer believe in revolutions. They believe in cashback apps. But every system built on illusions eventually encounters the weight of reality. And when debt turns into despair, consumption into silence, and progress into ruin, what remains is not just poverty. It is the visible beginning of a collapse that has already begun. What once seemed like mere economic instability has transformed into a profound and irreversible social phenomenon. The consequences of this invisible mechanism are beginning to emerge on the fringes of the American map, where the silence of small towns reveals an exhaustion that statistics cannot translate. Structural unemployment is no longer a temporary crisis. It is the new foundation of an exhausted society. Young graduates take jobs that pay less than rent, while retirees return to the workforce to secure the basics, medicine and food. The streets that once vibrated with the sound of engines and conversations now echo with solitary footsteps. Familiar shops close one by one, replaced by empty, dust-covered storefronts and faded signs announcing something new coming soon. But nothing new arrives. Progress has retreated silently, leaving behind a population aging in despair. It is a portrait of an America that doesn't collapse all at once, but slowly unravels, like paint dissolving in the rain. The impact is visible even in the landscapes. Houses that once sheltered entire families are now abandoned, their windows serving as a mirror to the emptiness of those left behind. Churches have lost parishioners, parks have lost laughter, and the sense of community has given way to distrust. In urban centers, fear has replaced hope. In rural areas, silence has become the most honest form of resistance. Meanwhile, the headlines still insist on a manufactured optimism. They speak of gradual recovery, of sustainable growth, but what is actually growing is the chasm between what is promised and what is experienced. The middle class, the one that sustained national pride, now balances between two worlds, that of survival and that of illusion. But if the external scenario is already deteriorating so visibly, what about what is happening inside people? What if America's true bankruptcy lies not in its coffers, but in its... So leave your opinion in the comments below. In a country where almost everything is mass-produced, even suffering has become standardized. Poverty, once measured in dollars, is now expressed in silence. Millions live surrounded by technology, comfort and conveniences, but feel the same emptiness as those who have lost everything. There is a kind of misery that doesn't appear in statistics, that of waking up every day with the feeling of being trapped in a purposeless routine. It's the emotional price of an economy that has transformed existence into performance. Inside our homes, comfort has become a prison. Screens have replaced human contact, algorithms dictate conversations, and affection has been reduced to notifications. There are entire families who, even living under the same roof, no longer look each other in the eye. Loneliness has ceased to be the exception and has become the invisible norm of modern life. It is the era of disconnected abundance, where we consume more to feel less. The financial system has discovered a cruel way to ensure that no one stops to think. Excess. The more options, the less direction. The more stimuli, the less awareness. The society that believed it had achieved freedom ended up trading autonomy for emotional and technological dependence. People no longer belong to places, they belong to brands, platforms, and contracts. And, in this process, the human being has become merely a disposable variable within an economic equation that has lost any notion of humanity. On cold nights in the metropolises, one can see the blue glow of windows illuminated by screens, each reflecting a story of isolation. There is noise, but no voice. There is movement, but no destination. The promise of progress brought comfort, but stole the meaning. Never has there been so much, and never has there felt so little. But if loneliness is the new language of modern civilization, perhaps numbers can reveal what words can no longer describe. Because behind every cold statistic lies a real portrait, that of a society pretending to be alive while slowly fading away. The numbers, when examined closely, reveal a story the country is trying to forget. 6 out of 10 Americans are drowning in never-ending debt. Credit, once a tool for mobility, has become the new shackle. More than 38 million people depend on food banks every month to survive, a number that surpasses the records of the Great Depression. Almost half of rents have increased by more than 40% in a decade, while wages remain stuck at levels from 20 years ago. Every hour, hundreds of families are evicted. In the outlying neighborhoods of Los Angeles, New York, and Houston, eviction is now routine, a bureaucratic ritual repeated to the sound of sirens and the awkward silence of neighbors. The American dream has become a short-term contract. Housing, food, and dignity have become negotiable privileges. The collapse is not announced by revolts, but by spreadsheets. In official reports, this data appears diluted, cloaked in euphemisms like temporary instability or market adjustment. But on the streets, the reality is impossible to soften. The worker who sleeps in their car to save on rent, the student who drops out of their course to support their parents, the elderly person who trades medicine for food, all are statistics of a system that converted them into numbers before taking away their names. American poverty is not a byproduct, it's an essential cog in the machine. And the truly frightening fact is this: it's profitable. Every debt paid, every late payment recorded, every new charge feeds the financial heart of a nation that survives by exploiting its own collapse. But what happens when this machine, which drives the world economy, starts spinning in vain? What remains of an empire that enriches itself by devouring its own citizens? The answers lie in a future that has already begun to reveal itself. The future that seemed distant is already creeping into the cracks of the present. There are no explosions, no sirens, only the muffled sound of a country slowly sinking. The crisis has ceased to be a headline and has become a way of life. Families are experiencing a silent collapse, where each day is an attempt to maintain the appearance of a stability that no longer exists. Fear has become routine, work has become survival, and hope, a memory too precious to hold on to. The middle class, once the symbol of American strength, now bears the weight of collective ruin. Indebted, exhausted, and emotionally paralyzed, it is the portrait of an empire consuming itself from within. With each new budget cut, with each reduced benefit, a layer of social safety net disappears. The distance between the top and the bottom has never been so great, and the abyss grows like an open wound that no one dares to treat. The culture of fear keeps everyone moving, but without direction. The fear of losing your job, the fear of not being able to pay the bills, the fear of getting sick. It's the fuel of a system that thrives while its citizens fragment. Obedience is born from exhaustion, and silence from disbelief. People don't rebel when they lose everything. They conform. And that's exactly what the system expects. Cities become showcases of a broken modernity. Skyscrapers gleam above empty sidewalks, while drones replace delivery drivers and cameras replace eye contact. Technology promised liberation, but delivered surveillance. Freedom has become a commodity, and the price is identity itself. But perhaps the collapse isn't the end. Perhaps it's just a mirror revealing what has been hidden for decades. Because what's at stake now isn't just the economic fate of a country. It's the very definition of what it means to be alive in the midst of a void. Invisible poverty is not a new phenomenon. It is merely the most recent reflection of a decline that began in the spirit before reaching the economy. The empire that promised freedom now lives imprisoned by its own creations. Technology, which should bring people closer, has isolated them. Consumption, which should liberate, has enslaved them. And progress, which once symbolized hope, has become the most sophisticated disguise for ruin. Behind every brightly lit shop window, there is a dark house. Behind every smile, an unpayable debt. Behind every optimistic statistic, a country trying to hide that it is too tired to dream. The American. Collapse isn't just about charts or balance sheets. It breathes in the pauses of those who have lost their purpose, in the eyes of those who work without knowing why. It's a kind of bankruptcy that doesn't appear on the stock exchanges, but in the silent early mornings when the city sleeps and the emptiness becomes impossible to ignore. The economic heart of the United States didn't suddenly stop beating. It simply began to lose its rhythm, suffocated by its own excess. And perhaps therein lies the most unsettling lesson. Poverty is not the absence of money. It is the absence of meaning. A country can continue to produce wealth and still languish in silence. If this truth made you think, subscribe. Here, each episode reveals what the headlines prefer to hide, because understanding the collapse isn't pessimism, it's survival. And sometimes, seeing the truth is the first step to escaping it.